tonight. We will be having a special strategic planning meeting to be held on Monday, December 17th at the Raton Convention Center from 3 to 5 p.m. There will also be a special City Commission closed session on Tuesday, December 18th at 3 p.m. in the City Commission chambers pursuant to NMSA 10-5-1H6 to conduct interviews with economic development proposers. City offices will be closed on Tuesday, December 25th in observance of Christmas Day and Tuesday, January 1st in observance of New Year's Day. And our next regular commission meeting will be Tuesday, January 8th, 6 p.m. right here. This time we will take comments from the general public. Anyone wishing to address the commission may do so at this time. Mr. Hageman.
Mayor and Council, good evening. Tim Hageman with the Economic Development Department. I address you this evening with some possibilities of adding additional economic development tools to your toolbox.
Cool.
The one that comes to what I think would complement your local Economic Development Act ordinance. That particular ordinance just helps economic-based companies and also manufacturing, with the exception of your historic theater and also breweries. The gross receipts, it's called gross receipts incentive program, takes gross receipts taxes that you aren't receiving at this time and helps recruit retail businesses to your community that you feel like are needed, such as the empty Kmart building here. So basically what it does is say, Mr. Developer or retail company, if you decide to choose to locate to that building, we will share the gross receipts tax with you during the first year up to 10 years in exchange for the improvements that you make in regards to the infrastructure in your community, such as wastewater treatment, sidewalks, any type of infrastructure that is public benefit to the community. And I think that there's other opportunities of providing incentives in regards to their total investment. So let's take, for instance, some other communities that have passed this. They have used up to 75% down to 50% of the gross receipts tax that this company will pay in the future. So during that first year, you would come up with an application for that company where they would apply. You come up with an agreement and contract that states that we're going to reimburse you the gross receipts tax that you've paid us up to 75% in exchange for the improvements that you made to that facility. It's very important with retail developers to be able to have that incentive locally of cash that helps reimburse their investment in making a decision and coming to a community. So I think that it would go a long ways to encouraging another Kmart type operation. Other communities have used it for, like, say, a theater. You already have 2 movie theaters, so that's not something that's needed. You could also identify commercial businesses that aren't here at this time for this, but it's primarily for large retail operations. What else could I say?
Tim, just a question, is this, would this, on the GRT, are we talking about just the municipal share of GRT or the entire thing, the whole 8%?
It's a local incentive, so it would be just your local
Okay,
GRT.
okay, all right.
So if this interests you, I'm putting together a draft ordinance application and process, and be happy to present that to the council in the future if that's of interest to you. And wanted to wish you a Merry Christmas and thank you for all of the work that you've done in regards to the economic development recently in your executive sessions. I love it when councils talk about economic development in executive sessions. One of the allowable uses of your time. And don't forget to include travel when it comes to providing an incentive for your organizations. Your Local Economic Development Act allows you to provide up to 10% of your budget for economic development. So I'm tremendously excited about what you have so far, but please make sure that you've got enough travel expenses for these folks to go to the meetings that we train them. And this allows them to meet with other economic developers to learn from them and partner with them and really enjoy the peer relationships that come out of the economic development conferences and the exposure that Raton gets by having your economic development organizations representing your community. Thank you, Mayor.
Tim, I would just comment that I think we definitely, I would work with you as far as the ordinance that you mentioned. I'd definitely like to get with you and follow up on that. And
Okay.
sounds like something I'd like to bring in front of the
Yeah, you
commission
have
for
nothing to
consideration.
lose
So,
because you're not receiving anything from Kmart right now.
Right.
So-
right.
Right.
And Tim, is this, it's not an additional tax that we're having to levy, is
No.
it?
It's just the
How
regular
does that-
grocery receipts tax that all
Okay,
retail and businesses pay.
okay.
It's just putting an incentive that we want this business to be located here that doesn't really exist at this time.
Right.
So does the reimbursement come back on a state level for them? Because I know we don't necessarily know how much gross receipts come out of a certain business.
That information can be provided through the agreement that you set up. I'll be happy to help you with that.
Cool.
I will follow up with you on that. I definitely
Okay,
have some interest.
very good.
Cool. Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to address us at this time? Now we'll move into the business section. Item 6A, approval of the November 27th regular commission meeting minutes. They are in your packet. You have time to go over them. Find any?
So I did have one typo correction on item D, 3/4 of the way down. It has the word commissioner, that should just be commission, and I mentioned it to Mike Flynn earlier.
Okay,
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as amended. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries, thank you. Got lost there for a minute. Item B, public hearing on ordinance amending section 90.999 of the Animal Control Ordinance. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, I'm going to make a recommendation to the commission right now that we postpone introduction of the ordinance. And I think that we've had additional discussion on this. I think that there's some provisions in there that we would like to get some additional legal review on. I'd like to talk to the city attorney and get his input on a few things that have been questioned on that. So I would ask the commission to postpone this item. Don't have a date when we would be complete with that review and potential revisions to it. Definitely after the first of the year, but bring it back to the commission in the future.
Have we had any conversation with Humane Society about postponing or?
Well,
Yeah,
we have
just
not had that conversation about
Okay.
postponement. We had a conversation about the introduction. Of course, you know, in that conversation, the Humane Society had expressed that they would like to get this cleared up
Right.
with municipal court, and, you know, just to remind the commission, the issue is that the municipal court has said that this should be a petty misdemeanor as opposed to a misdemeanor. And cases have been dismissed because there's that contention with the ordinance. And so we've made that revision to bring back, but then if you go to the penalty provisions of the ordinance, probably not appropriate wording for that term petty misdemeanor. And I think the question just is, then what does that do to other provisions in the ordinance where that's not distinguished, because it has not been distinguished before. So I think we want to take a bigger overall look at what that impact would be to our ordinances going forward. So I think we want to take our time to complete that legal review.
I agree with that. Okay, so item B was actually public hearing process of this. Item C would be deliberate and act an ordinance, no? Yeah, number 10,001, amending section 90.999 of the animal control ordinance. And you've heard from Mr. Berry that he would make a recommendation that we propose that, so I'd entertain a motion.
I will move to postpone item C, act on ordinance number 1001, amending section 90.999 of the animal control ordinance.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second to postpone item C, the ordinance of animal control. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Item D, deliberate and act on memorandum of understanding between the City of Raton and the Raton Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, we have had some conversations with the Chamber, and representative of the Chamber are here tonight. President D. Burks is here to address the Commission in regard to this memorandum of understanding. This would be a revision to an existing agreement, and we've had several meetings talking about the terms of the agreement. Just in general, before I turn this over to Dee, we've said that under the existing MOU, where there were certain requirements for the chamber to meet in the field of tourism, this would modify those duties of the chamber. And the chamber has said we primarily want to focus on keeping the visitor center operating and operating with the volunteers. We have a very dedicated set of volunteers that provide their time down there and meet with our visitors to town and give them all of the information that they would like. And we really see that we're evolving how we use that visitor center. We're heading towards improvements to the visitor center. We'll talk about that at some point, making better use of the space. You remember at one time we had state tourism in there, and we had space for state tourism, and we had office space for the chamber. So we probably would want to kind of look at the layout of the building, make some improvements to it. There are some structural improvements to the building. There are a number of things that we would talk about that would go into this general overall planning of making more efficient use of the facility. So we've made some changes to this to reflect that I think changing set of duties and mission with the chamber. There are some other things outside of this MOU that we would like to talk about as well, as far as overall improving how we use our lodgers tax resource to promote Raton, both in the promotional side and the non-promotional side. So I think there's kind of an overall planning effort going on. Now, this may be another case like the last item where, because this is the last city commission meeting of 2018, I may be rushing this to you a little bit, and so we are talking about some wordsmithing on the fly as we go. And what the chamber has presented to you is proposed revisions to the MOU that I had given to the chamber earlier. I think Dee will report that her board has met and talked about some terms here, and then I think that maybe some wordsmithing might be discussed here on the side of the commission as well. So we can do several things here. I think the chamber has expressed they would probably like to talk about word revision and ask the commission to go ahead and take action on this. We can do that. We can, if we decide, continue to work on the MOU. I would say that going forward, it's kind of a living document where we can come back at any time. And of course, we renew the agreement annually, but then we can talk about the terms of that any time outside of that renewal period as well. So with that, Mayor and Commission, I will yield the floor to Ms. Burks.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much. Thank you for allowing us to be here. First of all, I do want to express on behalf of the entire Chamber Board and all of our volunteers, our gratitude to this commission for being so supportive of our efforts. Over the last 2 years, we have taken what could absolutely look like it was going to be a very bad situation for Raton, and it has turned into an incredibly positive situation for us and continues to be that positive shining light in our tourism, and hopefully will continue to. We have also learned a lot. And so parts of this revision are based on some of that learning. And so really, we had already discussed many things with your city manager and with several of you, and that's reflected in his revisions. There are a few, some very minor and others a little bit bigger things, but I really think we're very close on this, and if you all would like to, we will go over those. First, I do want to say, just for your background knowledge, that in the last 2 years, since September of 2006 to September of this year, we have served just over 41,000 visitors to Raton, 41,873. The volunteer hours during that time have been 6,232. The point of light value on those volunteer hours is $153,868. The board staffing hours, for those of you unfamiliar with our board, I think our board is one of the most workingest boards there are. Because we do staff the VIC as well as being a board. We don't just make board decisions. So our staff averages, between the 5 of us, 30 hours a week at the VIC staffing for 2 years. We have done that. We've had 5 board members for 2 years, and we have done that for 2 years, which is a big commitment. Those hours are worth $75,551. A total of $229,419 worth of value that is being given free to the city of Raton via the Visitor Center. I do want to tell you, I'm very proud of our volunteers. Some of our volunteers have been with us from day one. They are committed. They know a lot of the visitors by name that visit repeatedly. It's working into a very fabulous situation from a hospitality standpoint. It would not have happened without them. And I don't want there to be any question that the volunteers are the key to this continuing to run in a cost-effective manner for the city, and for us to have the great return on people's experience. So I think that's something that really needs to be well understood, and I know you all understand it. Now let's look at the MOU quickly for those changes. I've highlighted the areas of discussion. Some of them are minor. For example, Section A, number 5, on the landscaping. Landscaping is an incredibly broad term, especially when you look at a building and grounds the size of the Visitor Center. This is really a first impression for many people who come to Raton. We have had a little bit of an issue with getting the grass mowed, especially ahead of holiday weekends. So we would like to create a schedule where we're sure that happens before weekends, so people get the best impression, because you really don't want people walking up to the visitor center with, weeds. And that does happen. So we just want a little alteration of that schedule is all that's required. It's not a big deal. We would also ask that some hedge trimming be included. The master gardeners have been kind enough to volunteer their time to work with our flower beds. We've paid for those flowers, for the mulch. We've paid for all of that as the chamber. The master gardeners have put their efforts in to make that look nice. It is a little bit difficult for them to manage the hedges. And so we would request that landscaping include frequent trimming of the hedges and those trees, because that's a little bit more difficult for those volunteers to manage. We absolutely still will buy flowers. We will still, of course, do the flower beds, and hopefully the master gardeners will continue to enjoy that experience. So that is, we just wanted to find that. We've also had an issue with clippings being left for weeks at a time in the parking lot in a big pile. It looks terrible, and especially during the summer, it means those spaces can't be used. So if we could, here again, very, very minor thing, but it does make an impression on people when they drive up. So very minor, simple. B, number 3, is custodial and cleaning costs for the Raton Tourism Information Center. We estimated it will take about $70 a week, and this is for the daily cleaning, the ongoing cleaning that the city is now doing. The discussion with Scott is that they wanted that to switch over to us, for us to find someone to do that instead of a city employee. This is our estimation of that cost of $70 a week. That's $35.70 a year. The city right now, there is a contractor, a vendor that does deep cleaning, and we need that done about every 6 weeks or every 6 months. Deep cleaning includes cleaning the carpets, steam cleaning the tile, the true deep cleaning, not the daily cleaning. Actually, that cost Michael Ann just gave me, and that was $478 for one time. So that's $850 plus dollars. 900. I'm not a great math person, but that's that twice, 478 twice. So those are the cleaning costs. And in this particular version of the MOU, that is put on the chamber to pay. We would like the city to consider including that in the amounts paid. The last thing, actually there's 2 more things. Number 13, I'll come back to the dollars in a minute, so we'll get to all the dollars here in a second. Number 13 on B, the chamber shall attend regularly monthly meetings of Lodgers Tax Advisory Board, report tourism promotion activities, perform during the period, submit written reports, and a board member shall attend the LTAB quarterly. That's what we would like to do.
And I would tell you that I intended to strike that, and I got that, and then under 8, I made a mistake there too, but I had intended to strike that. I think that we do want the chamber to report to the commission. It can be on annually, quarterly, or whatever
We would be happy
schedule
with
you want.
quarterly. We have to submit quarterly financials anyway.
Yeah.
The LTAB meeting being held in the middle of the afternoon on a weekday has been a real challenge. So we would be happy to report on a quarterly basis, but yes, that's great if you were planning to strike it anyway. Now, let's go back and talk about the money. The version that the city manager gave us had an amount of $18.75 a month. I believe that's $22,500. Our current MOU is $30,000. In this new agreement, the city is agreeing to pick up some of the utilities we've been paying and a few other items. But just so you know what we're talking about here. In the original MOU, the chamber was required to pay for the gas, natural gas. We were required to pay for the phone. We were required to pay for the copy machine and the copies. And then, our activities. Well, basically what has happened is since September of 2016, and for that, and management, we were to receive office space. Well, since 2016, the chamber spent over $12,000. So we're not receiving free office space. In fact, we are currently involved in an operation we do not make one dime off of. Yet we are required to spend more than $12,000 of our members' money on an operation that benefits the entire city. So it's getting harder and harder to answer those questions from our members. Why are their dollars being spent for an operation when we are getting no office space for free, quote, and we're not making any money off of it? So we decided to lump those costs all together. However, when we're talking about the copy machine, we have a lease agreement that's $129 a month, and then we pay for the copies. We feel like we can continue to pay for the copies. We are in control of how many copies are made. So we feel like absolutely we can continue to bear that cost, but we wouldn't have that machine if it were not for the visitor center. So we feel like the lease portion of it could be paid by the city. We actually went back to lodger's tax last year and asked them to pay for copies in that lease, which they did for that fiscal year, but we're not doing that for this fiscal year. So we'd like that included. The amount we came up with is to staff that visitor center with a paid employee. In addition to our volunteers, we need 2 people. There are a lot of our volunteers who do not want to be up there by themselves, and honestly, it's not safe to be. If they are up there by themselves, they can't even go to the bathroom. So that's an issue. Having a regular paid employee on staff allows us to, when a volunteer calls in, when someone doesn't show, when we don't have any volunteers that can work that specific time slot, it allows us to cover it, and we always have 2 people there. The visitor center is currently open 47 hours a week, 7 hours a day, Monday through Saturday, Sunday 11 to 4. That's 47 hours. The amount we are requesting includes $10 an hour for those 47 hours. We will be able to cover that either with a full-time person and another part-time person, or 2 part-time people. The reason we requested $10 is because it is a non-benefited position. If you take minimum wage and you add 35%, which would be benefits, you come up to just under $10. That's where we got that amount. So we are asking to be able to fund a position in addition to our volunteers, so we don't have those gaps. And we don't have volunteers who are afraid to stay there by themselves. Let's see. We have that amount, which is $23,900. The lease for the copy machine at $1,548. The cleaning amount at $3,750. That comes to a total of $29,198. That's almost the same as we're receiving now. It comes out to $2,433 a month. So the city's amount was $1,875. Our difference is $558. So we just need to make a decision on the amount. That'll let us know how we need to staff, what we need to tell our chamber members as far as what we're receiving, and how we're going to move forward. The board really looked at the visitor center in terms of long-term sustainability. No matter how the visitor center is run, we felt like, okay, that is the minimum. You must have a staff person there. Let's just say you don't have any volunteers, 47 hours a week. You must have gas, you must have phone, these are all must-have. And so we tried to work down to the absolute minimum must-have, because from a long-term standpoint, if this commission and the Lodgers Tax Board is going to fund the visitor center, there needs to be a minimum requirement for long-term sustainability. And we feel like we're getting to that number. That number is, I feel like, going to be around that $30,000 mark pretty much no matter how you cut it. It's just where the money comes from. Then is where it comes down to. So that was our proposal. What questions do you all have?
Can you give me those numbers again on the gas
Oh.
phone copy? Sorry, I've been trying to write fast.
You mean the makeup, the
Kind of
20,
the thing where you just ended with.
the 29, okay. 10 hours, $10 an hour to cover 47 hours, and that's for 51 weeks because there are 6 to 8 days a year we are closed. $23,900 is that amount for the 47 hours at $10 an hour. The lease for the copy machine, not the copies, just the lease, $1,548. The cleaning, which we're estimating at $3,750, not including the deep cleaning because the city is already paying for that. That's it. In addition to the things that are being offered in the MOU. It works out to $2,433 a month, and we're currently receiving currently we're not receiving anything because we have to submit actual expenses, which is great, but it'll be $2,433 a month versus the $2,500.
How soon do you have to know? I mean, are you under the gun right now? I would like to, personally, I would like to get both of these together and get it wrapped in my mind the right way. I mean, are we under a gun here?
Well, basically, we're paying, the chamber's paying a staff person to staff the hours. We are paying all the expenses. I mean, do we need to just turn that in for reimbursement because, I mean, how do you want us to do that? And which is fine. I'll take as much time as you need. We just want to be sure we can,
What,
it
and
drains
what,
us pretty quickly.
and what the issue is, we have said that with the meetings with the chamber, that until we adopt a revised MOU, the existing MOU is in effect. So the issue primarily is with providing the tourism coordinator. A lot of that current invoice would go to the costs with the tourism coordinator. Not all of it. There are reimbursable expenses that consist of the utilities or could be other things in there. But if there is an employment situation here, that's basically what the existing MOU said. I think we can reimburse if
Yeah, because
you're,
we're planning to hire, we already have an ad out to hire a VIC coordinator, so, we don't want to delay that,
but I think that's, we don't want to pay for a tourism coordinator with lodgers tax funds when there is not one.
Right.
So, but then we've talked about, well, maybe we ought to get the MOU approved by the commission to see where that goes. There's a question of whether to proceed with that or you're not. Now, you're saying you don't have a paid tourism person there now. You're waiting
we're
to
trying
see.
to hire someone.
how this comes
But
out.
that person would be a VIC coordinator. There will be no tourism person there, and that's something else we have to have an
Well,
understanding
we're just
about.
saying it's eligible for lodgers
Yes.
tax
That
funds.
person would be 100% focused on the visitor center, 100% focused on the people who come in the visitor center, 100% focused on working with the city for conventions and that kind of thing. But they wouldn't be, as our definition had been before, a tourism coordinator. They would be 100% focused on tourism for the VIC, 100%.
Now, here's the other thing I would add to the conversation. What we had talked about is, and this is going to be something I'll turn over to the commission for you to consider, but, really using that facility to maybe generate some revenues also, that we can pay for some operations, not necessarily all with lodgers funds, but, and how we manage the facility along with the chamber, monetize the facility. And, we're really having kind of a general discussion on all of our facilities because it would apply to other city buildings as well. Can
Well,
we
and-
use those in a way? So I don't know if you want to discuss that, but
Actually,
that's,
it's at the bottom of
Yeah,
to add
yeah,
that
so-
in, because we need to have an agreement. Should we determine, and we've got several great ideas, to monetize the space, but, you have to realize, if we're gonna do all the work to monetize the space, and we don't get anything out of it, and our funding is taken away because we worked hard and monetized the space, it's very demotivating. So, we
and-
just need to figure out how that's gonna work, and have a discussion on, given monetizing the space, how is that money gonna be shared, or where is it gonna go? And we wanna do that up front, so there's no misunderstanding down the road.
and we'll have to find some happy middle ground here because likewise we'll fall under, oversight of the state and independent auditors as far as, who's making a revenue off of a city building, and you have to show that the public is getting something for that. So I don't know that we're interested in collecting cash from that, but we want the benefit of the use of the facility generally. But that's a issue that will kind of kick to the commission here for your discussions. And that's something that we can work on as we go.
I like that.
We may not have that answer today.
I like the fact that this is a living document that we approve it now. And tomorrow I find something that really bothers me, then I say, let's talk about this. We can continue to work on this
Yes,
as
absolutely.
a memorandum.
Yes, and we love having that freedom too. That has been wonderful. The relationship has been very, very good between us and all of the commission, and so it's absolutely, we see it the exact same way.
Well, I'm a great supporter of the chamber down there.
Everybody has been, and we appreciate it. We really appreciate it.
You guys have made some very positive changes, and I know you've all worked very hard, and thank you.
Yeah. We are having a recognition tea for our volunteers from 2 to 4 on Saturday, just so you know.
Just
Our liaisons already know, we definitely are trying to do more recognition of those volunteers because they have done so much.
Yeah. Go
We,
ahead.
we did kind of a trial run, holding a dinner there this weekend with the PEO, Philanthropic Educational Organization of Women, and we had just at the cutoff of how many guests are allowed in the building, but it all went very smoothly. We have not, our intention was to simply give the chamber a donation for their work at that, which we have not voted on what we can afford to donate, but that's how that went. But it
So
went
after you take out my salary.
after your salary. Our auctioneer is highly paid.
Well, and that's one of
Yeah.
the things that we
You got a
want to
whole
look at.
quarter.
It's a city facility, and so we want to make it available for events like this. And
Sure.
we should put those pictures out on our Facebook and told people to call us if they want to book events, doesn't matter what it is. And we're working through the little kinks on how we hold that event and how many people it takes to do it, and it went very, very well. So we would like to do more of that
I
with
think
that
I was
facility.
the only one who got stressed and crabby about anything.
Well, let
But
me
it
ask
did
another
work
question then. After you monetize this and you have a function in there, who cleans up? Are we requiring one of our city employees to come and do all of that? Or,
No.
This event, we cleaned up ourselves.
Well, and we would like to make that a requirement. If you're going to come, you're going to clean up.
Right.
The city employees deliver the tables, they come and pick up the tables, which they did crack it on this morning, and, which is great. They were wonderful. I know they're very, very busy with the tables set up. One of the things we may do in the future is ask city employees to help us set up the tables. I don't know how many of you heard, but our one employee slipped and fell with one of the tables, and she has been out. She hurt her back, so that probably wasn't the best idea. But we're learning, and so we may require a little bit of help there. But other than that, the individuals running the event, putting on the event, they did the decorating for their event, they did the cleanup for their event. We were there helping them, but it went very well. And we'd like to continue that requirement, that they do their decorating, they do their cleanup.
do you have a deposit, cleaning deposit from whoever's doing it at this time?
No, we don't. However, since our board was basically there, they wouldn't have dared clean up. So then we all helped, of course, you know.
These are things that have just gone through.
Yeah. Yeah, however, having a deposit for people we don't know very well, that's probably a good practice. There's some of those best practices we would have to start implementing if we did it on a regular basis.
I saw the pictures on Facebook, and I thought it looked very pretty. And I think it's an option definitely for monetizing. I think there are some kinks to work out with how involved city employees are, if the chamber's
Right.
keeping the money, or just
Exactly.
how to work that out. But I think it's a really good idea. I did wonder if we've ever not that I want the visitors to be open less hours, but a lot of places our size, it's more seasonal hours. The hours flex a little bit. Has that been something that you guys have ever considered?
We did that last year. It did not go over real well. We got a lot of complaints and we just shortened it an hour on each end. And so we really feel like we've kept our hours exactly the same year round, and that's been very effective. We are able to catch early morning people, more people who are coming in later in the afternoon, and that's been very effective. So we'll probably, and here again, you wouldn't think that 2 hour difference would make that big a difference, but it did. And so we did try that last year, shortening those hours, needing maybe fewer volunteers. It did not work very well.
What kinds of data do you guys collect when people check in? Is it just name, location? Do you do
Yes.
times? Do you do interest?
We do, a lot of times we'll know who's morning and who's afternoon because we split shifts.
Intel.
We don't do a lot. The more you require people to write down, the less likely they are. We tried asking them to do that on the iPad, the computer. That got zero response. I mean, zip. So we no longer do that. We stick with who they are, how many people in their party, where they're from, where they're going to. So it helps us know, are they traveling through? Are they going to New Mexico? Are they going to Colorado? Are they just snowbirding it between Arizona and Springs or what? And that gives us a lot of information. We do talk to the people one-on-one. And, I would point that out because doing the math with what this MOU has paid the chamber over the last 2 years, the number of people we've seen, it costs about $1.39 a person. There are no events in Raton where you get that kind of return on the money where people are talked to face-to-face, one-on-one, every single day, face-to-face, one-on-one. And so that's pretty good, that's a pretty good price. So I feel like, I'm not sure what other data you might be interested in, but we don't want people to not sign up or not
Right,
sign.
because it's too much.
Yes, because it gets a little overwhelming, and they've been really good about that, and we maintain all of that. I will tell you that when the fires happen, the reason this number is not higher, because it really should have been for this year, the month the fires happened is one of our bigger months, June, and 64 was closed. So our numbers dropped tremendously. We lost 40%, and they were all Texans. And so even though those numbers have come back strongly, it had a huge effect on us.
Sure.
And so it's something for us to really keep in mind, that those things will have an effect, but it doesn't stop people coming here. It hasn't stopped those people from returning, but it does have an effect.
Well, I was doing some math too, and I was thinking, and I'm not saying your number's not right, because your number
Yeah.
is right for what you're getting. I was just looking at, as from a city expense, for the building, the water, sewer, electric, trash, internet, phone, adding gas in, I was trying to come up with a dollar number per visitor, and it was closer to like $2.50 because
Right.
of those expenses on a city, and which is, still, I think, a fair amount, especially if we can.
Right.
One-on-one contact is so important at the visitor center.
It is, and even for $2.50, that's still a great
Yeah.
price. When you look at the thousands, tens of thousands of dollars lodgers tax spends for events that bring in only a few thousand people, and most of those people are locals, these are 100% tourists. They're coming here, and $2.50 is still a good price, I think. And really, that building's gonna be a cost no matter what. Even if it's closed, it'd be that cost. So, I really feel like the more people we see, the better the return on that initial investment. And hopefully it will really prove up numbers to justify renovations. And we've already given your city manager and our liaisons ideas for those renovations, to include a gift shop, to include, a better configuration. So, as we go down the road, I can see the building being even more and more useful, being able to be monetized and add back to the dollars that it's costing. I don't know that it'll ever be a wash, but at least it'd be something,
Any other questions?
I have a couple more, Pamela, sorry.
Go ahead.
So the visitor information coordinator position.
Yep.
So is that person going to be responsible, or those two people, however it works, for the phone calls that come in and like relocation packets and responding to all that kind of thing? And their main duty would be that visitor center, and that's?
Yes. Volunteer staffing, recruiting, training, All of the staff employed at the visitor center does that. Right now, our board does a lot of that, but we're going to be turning that over to staff members. But yes, that's what they would be doing. Running a 7-day-a-week operation and staffing that operation, training those people, having the constant turnover, it is a big job. And so yes, we need a dedicated person. One of the issues we had with just having a tourism coordinator is there was so much of the time that person was not in the building. And so it was like they were there, but they weren't there. And so we need someone who is actually there and can deal with staff, can deal with questions, can deal with, issues that come up, can, call the police when needed, can, fill out accident forms if we have one. Those sorts of things that we would require of an employee, as much more so than a visitor.
I think that's a good change, honestly. My only other concern, which I mentioned to Scott, which, as looking at the contract, is with the new brand, I'd like to see that reflected in the visitor center. So, whether it's window clings, banners, signage, and then rebranding some of the information that we give out as a city.
And, we can put some specific language. I think that we would, as we say, we want to coordinate activities there and events with our staff and our affiliates, as we state here. We can expand upon that, but, I think if we have an initiative through the city, like the branding, we would have city staff coordinate with, people that we have at the visitor center, but certainly like window displays be a good place to do that. We'll work with the visitor center
Well,
folks there.
and really, that's absolutely your call. I mean, if you want to, some sort of specific signage or, that's really your call. I mean, it's absolutely a city building. So one of the things that we already did get approval to do was take down the really tacky-looking Explore Raton banner.
That was
So,
my next question.
yeah, if we want to, replace that or do something there with something that looks nicer, that we're totally on board with that.
Yeah, and generally, what we had talked about is, improving the signage. We had talked about some informational signs and, the signage that we put at the multimodal there, it's really attractive, informational. It combines some photos and some narrative, and maybe look at improving things that way. I think there are a lot of ideas that we would do, and really I would say again, we're really looking at the beginning of maybe a 2-year planning period here when we make a decision and we finance, a big project. We want to do some things like the signage leading up to that. But I think that we're kind of in that planning phase where we need to, have the chamber at the table as well as some of our other partners in the city, and that process has been going on. It's been going on for the promotional side and the non-promotional side, but really improve our game on both sides of that.
We are really interested in improving our aesthetic. The Summer of Color was so incredibly successful. It's really a recognition of how important it is for things to look nice. It makes a huge impression on people. And so we really want to continue that with the visitor center, and this year we really want it to look nice. We want it to be very clean, even cleaner than it's been. We want it to, have, really nice, up-to-date signage, and it just to look nice, a good representation.
Anyone else?
I do have one question. In that $10 an hour, there's still the requirement though that you carry workman's comp, right, and that kind of thing?
Yeah. There is.
That's what I thought.
The landscaping, we can clarify some language in there.
Yeah. That's a
That's
simple thing, but
simple.
aesthetically it's important, but it's simple to clarify.
Do you still want to postpone a meeting on it, or no?
Well,
Well, I think we need to discuss the money and make sure
that's my question. The proposal we got from Mr. Barry, it is significantly different than what you've just proposed, and I would myself like to look at that a little closer and have some discussion in that to make sure we're in the right.
In the meantime, is there a way we
I think what you guys did,
Yeah.
you know, you got my support, what you guys have done. I just want to make sure this is the direction that we're headed.
No, I understand completely.
I'm just wondering, in the meantime, if they do hire someone, I don't want to leave them just hanging
Right.
either. So
That's the other thing.
That's
It's
my
just-
only concern, yeah.
But we're 5 members here. It's whatever the commission wants.
We're still functioning under the previous MOU, correct?
We are, that's in effect, you know, until
But not
we-
the dollars, we're not being paid,
They're not being paid.
So-
But if
They're
you-
just,
Employee.
no at all. We're supposed to submit actual, but I need to know what's included in actual. Does
So
that-
if they do get someone hired, how will that be worked
I think if
until
they
we get this?
hired someone today, it's not the tourism coordinator, but basically if they're filling the duties that are under state statute eligible for a lodger's tax, and it just has to be directed at tourism promotion, then we'll pay for that person. That will,
Well, and my question is,
Reimbursement, is that?
well, if that's, you know, what the existing MOU says is that the chamber will provide a full-time tourism coordinator. The term tourism coordinator, all it has to be is services that fit under that description of statute, what's eligible for lodger's tax. That's just tourism or visitor promotion related. So if it fills that thing and it says full-time, if it's full-time, then I think we just pay the invoiced amount that we have in the agreement now. If you hire one part-time person and you say, well, that's, let's say it's a 20-hour week, I think it makes sense to prorate that.
well, my question is, we have an admin assistant who's been filling this spot and covering weekends, and the time that the VIC is open, she is 100% dedicated toward tourism, hasn't been doing chamber stuff because we have no tourism coordinator. And so she's been filling that position, so is that reimbursable?
Yes,
Okay, that was my question, at least for the hours the VIC is open, because
yes.
she works 8 to 5, so the hours the VIC is not open, we would not bill for.
Yes, I think that's, we agree on that.
And my other question is, because we are proposing to include the copy lease, and of course the phone and these other things that we don't currently pay for, are those reimbursable as well?
Well, that is reimbursable.
Okay,
Yes,
okay, I just want to make sure that we do it right.
yes.
So, yeah, I guess if there's no, I mean, if we can easily work out the kinks under the current MOU,
Just for another month or.
then I have no problem postponing.
Is that
No, I'm
gonna
totally
work
fine
for
with
you?
that.
Okay?
Will that be okay for city staff, is it?
Yes, it would be. Michael Ann, am I correct in saying?
No, that would be fine.
I would take that in the form of a motion, then, if that's what you want to do.
I'll make a motion to postpone, let's see here. Item D, memorandum of understanding between the city of Raton and the Raton Chamber of Commerce with the understanding that the current MOU is still in place.
And would you like to put a date, like next meeting?
January 8th, please.
Okay. We have a second?
Here's your idea.
We have a motion and a second to postpone the MOU till our January 8th meeting. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item E, deliberate and act on 2019 legislative capital outlay priorities. Mr. Barry?
Mayor and Commission, I'll refer back to, we have a two-part presentation here, and I'm going to do the first part. So I'll refer you back to a memorandum that I had distributed to you prior to the last meeting, and we talked about recommendations for requests to the legislature for capital outlay, and I'll run down those briefly. I won't go into the detail that we talked about last time, and then we'll talk about what that means. So in my memorandum, we had talked about the street improvements to the downtown commercial area. Specifically, I want to look at a couple of blocks of Park Avenue. That's between First Street and Third Street. That's one of those is in front of the post office. And then I wanted to look at a block of Cook Avenue that has not been worked on in a long time. That's between Second and Third. And we the number that I would like to request from the legislature is $400,000 to do that work. That's in line with our program of rehabilitating downtown avenue or original town site avenues. I talked about the police department equipment, and we put a request of $200,000 on that item. Storm drainage rehabilitation project, again, we're talking about a 1930s storm drainage system in the original town site, $300,000. Additional public works equipment replacement, that would be $200,000. That includes a backhoe, a dump truck, mower, some snow control equipment, and an asphalt hot box. And then at 5, I had a project to recycle asphalt millings. As we talked about, we have a very large pile of asphalt millings that we would resurface city streets with. We're asking for $500,000 from the legislature on that. And then lastly, number 6, airport hangar. We had requested that the legislature help us with the construction of a hangar at the airport for the amount of $250,000. That money would be used to match a grant from state aviation for $250,000. Total project cost $500,000. So we said at the time that the item really needs to be listed on the infrastructure capital improvement plan. That was the plan that was approved by the commission late August and submitted in September. And we prioritize our projects in that, and it's more ideal if we ask for funding for a high-rated, high-ranking project, one that the commission has identified as a high priority. But all of these are in our ICIP, and they range up and down the rankings. Additionally, and let me just say that following the meeting, these are recommendations to the commission. You can add, subtract, or make any revisions to our recommendations that you see fit. And upon your approval, I will begin the process of filling out the applications and submitting these to legislative services in advance of the legislative session. Now, as we said, the legislature is well ahead of their revenue projections. That was revised from $1.2 billion to $1.1 billion yesterday, that they would expect to be over their revenue projections. And so what happens with that, we will find out. But it's a pretty good year. Of course, this is derived from oil and gas revenues, which, as everyone knows, is very cyclical, and that may not be there in coming years. So I'm sure the legislature is going to talk about that. I would state to the commission that Raton has not retained the services of a lobbyist in past years. I think in some time in the past that has happened, but not for many years. But because there could be significantly more funding of capital improvement projects, and we maybe have some other things on the table that we would like to talk to with the legislature that may be a consideration. We would have to act on that fairly quickly, but this may be a time and a situation where we might consider that. And I don't have a proposal for you now. I'm just prepping you on that, and I will take your feedback on that and act in accordance with, but it may be something that we give some consideration to. Like I say, it has not happened for many years. Now, we do have Mr. Campbell, Dan Campbell, General Manager of Raton Waterworks, and I'd ask Mr. Campbell to come forward. He has provided you with a memorandum regarding a capital outlay request related to improvements on Lake Maloya Dam. These are safety improvements that we have done preliminary engineering, and we do have a solid estimate of construction cost as you see in your packet. And there, I would turn that over to you, Mr. Campbell.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is an issue that's been before the Water Board for quite a while as we work on Lake Maloya's dam issues. This actually would be for the Commission's support of actually having this as something we would approach primarily thinking through the Office of State Engineers Dam Safety Bureau out of their funding portion that would come through them. That does not mean it would not count against Raton, because as the legislator says, they always would say if they fund this, well, you got that. But still, as you've seen projects from Springer's Dam all the way down to several around Vegas, we would actually make this a priority to our legislators. We've already had a discussion with the Dam Safety Bureau that this is actually a priority for them. With Chuck Thompson, their actually manager. As you can see, though, this would actually be, it's $1.5 million option. What it's actually looking at doing is repouring the crest concrete, which is what's showing its age. That's something we're working, closely with the Dam Safety Bureau on. We continue to patch that, but that's the concrete that was not done, what was it, 2003, 2004, something like that.
Right.
At that time with KS Berry Engineering, that we actually repoured the spillway of everything except the crest. We've had a lot of problems with that. But with Raton Waterworks, or City of Raton capital funds, we've actually done the monitoring wells and also already the planning to where by the time the legislature meets, we'll have 100% plans. We'll have 90% plans by the end of this month to do this portion. And the other big option on here is the inspection of the conduits, which is quite expensive. And this is actually just to try to actually get those conduits under the dam dewatered and get a camera through there to take a look at them. 1946 pipes run counter to natural grade to where we're going to have to dewater them. Actually, after we cut into them and isolate them inside the lake, requires an on-site diver. It's a complicated process just to do this. But what we're trying to do is make infrastructure decisions for the next 50 years as we go forward on Lake Maloya. I guess at that point, what I was actually doing, and I brought it up to Scott if we did this, is to have the commission's support on that to where we actually can go to Senator Campos, our legislators, and say this is a priority to us. It is, I believe, still in the top 5 on your ICIP, is Lake Maloya's dam issues as we're addressing this. To the point of, in some numbers, it could be as high as 25 million to actually change that dam long term. We realize we're not going to do that. What we're trying to do at this point is make the service spillway as good a condition as we can, address the conduits. We will actually address any bypass flows we need, but to turn around and have Lake Maloya Dam ready for the future. There's no issues up there that actually are a problem right now. The dam is closely monitored. It provides our water and stores it, but these are issues that are really important to the Dam Safety Bureau, to where these would be addressing to that group that we need to solve this with some legislative funding when those funds are available.
Now, we've had a phone call with Dam Safety Bureau and make any comments here, Dan, but I think they report they have some capital improvement funding, and Lake Maloya Dam, as they told us, is a high priority for them, but not number one, correct? What it said is, I think it's kind of their second priority throughout the state of New Mexico, but they have a dam project they're looking at that I think they rank higher. We don't know what that is, but they have probably funds to do this. We're just not sure what the scope of the other project is. But we've had that conversation with them, and we've had many conversations with Dam Safety Bureau about the project and the design of that. And the city of Raton funded the design part of this, so they recognize that Raton Waterworks is being a very proactive dam owner. I think this gets you a lot of credit there when you're asking them to come to the table. They're the Dam Safety Bureau. We're asking for dam safety improvements that we've taken the initiative on and kind of put our money where our mouth is. So we're not sure of how that works with them this year.
They're
But
asking for an increased allotment because of the extra funds that are there. How they handle that, I don't know. The one thing we are doing, we will actually have it in their hands that we've done, is to have actually a project that's ready to go to construction. And we'll have actually the plans done on it. And even on the conduit issue, there's already been quite a bit of study on looking at doing that, to where we're trying to make Malloy a priority and have that funding in place. And I guess even if we didn't get that funding this year, is actually, making that a priority that we keep on the ICIP and have this commission support, to where even if we come back next year and keep moving forward with that to try to get that funding and keep it on their radar screen. What they want to know is the commission supporting it, but also that we reach out to our legislators and that it is a priority in this area.
So their Dam Safety Commission is asking us to do it this way, to switch it over to.
They're actually saying they consider funding it, but they're asking that we approach our legislators. Well, to do that, we would actually need to know that the commission wishes to do that. This could be actually a separate action that you could actually, and I'm just thinking out loud, Scott, that actually says we're approaching the Dam Safety Bureau to help us, and we approach our legislators that way, and actually have it as a standalone secondary list or something. And don't include your other one, and actually just go to Senator Campos and our representative saying we're going to actually go to the Dam Safety Bureau for assistance on this. But bear in mind, the same thing is, if they fund this, they always, as we've seen in the past, come back and say, well, you did get that. So it is an issue that's going to come up. But it is something that, as the Water Board's quite well aware of, that we're going to have to address and keep in focus. That's why we've done what we've done as far as planning and actually putting some monitoring wells on there for some piezo meters, that we're doing some instrumentation. Most of that is reaching out ahead and doing some of the steps that the Dam Safety Bureau is already requiring. In every inspection, this is going to keep coming up.
And I think part of this conversation is something Dan and I talked about, is that we've seen through this capital outlay request in the past that we would get a token amount for a project. And I go back to the filter plant where we had asked, we would put this project together. I think right now the project's over $2 million, correct? And we had asked for capital outlay because the legislature says we want to fund basic infrastructure, important infrastructure. Water is important in New Mexico, and this really, we had done a lot of due diligence on that, getting ready to go forward with the project. And I think that there was a capital outlay of $25,000 towards this $2 million project. It really was just kind of a bone with no meat on it. And then the governor vetoed that after that, so it wasn't a problem. But I think we want to work this in a way where we don't have a $1.5 million project, and we have one capital outlay request fulfilled, and it's some token amount that does absolutely no good on this project. We're looking at getting the entire thing funded. So I think that's the concern that Dan and I had talked about in dealing with the legislature. But we want to communicate to them, this is ready to go, and it should be a high priority for Dam Safety Bureau.
And I guess the thought process might already be, if they have another one out of their funding that's their priority project now, as we keep this in front of them, have the plan, even if it's not this year, if we actually have that step and we move up to the priority out of their next funding, depending on what funding they do have next year, is make sure that it doesn't get forgotten and that we do address it. We've done some in-house labor up there. Malloy's spillway is fine. We'll continue to monitor it and stuff like that. This is a project that just needs to happen, and actually, if we make sure that they don't forget that it's out there, because it's always been in their top three. They did one project last year in the Las Vegas area. They have another one. We don't know what that is this year, and we were alluded to that we were second or whatever on their list.
Well, like I say, Raton Waterworks has really moved this project along, and you know, they're not asking for something for nothing. They've put their funding into this project to get this far, and moved it extensively. And we're kind of calling on the Dam Safety Bureau to step up now. If you know, this is a high-ranking project in the state of New Mexico, and if you have the ability to do it, we need to get going on this. So I think it's communication, you know, with, again, our legislators and Dam Safety Bureau and maybe the governor's office, that this is, I think there's a way to do this.
I guess that's my question is, are we proposing to add it to the memo? Are we trying to do this separately as just our strong support? What is our best way forward? It is important, and I thank you for everything you've done in bringing this project to this point, because it's pretty incredible.
To me, it seems like the best way to go would be to ask the legislators to support through the Dam Safety Bureau, just because it seems like if we put it on the ICIP, it's just, you know, they tend to, like they've done in the past, throw us a bone.
Well, it's currently on the ICIP.
Well, yeah, but,
It's-
I mean,
if it's part of this request.
right.
Yeah, if our friend to the south holds true, we're gonna just get a mere pittance for this. I'm just worried about how is that gonna impact the rest of our projects. That's where my whole concern. I think absolutely the Dam Safety Bureau should be the ones financing this, and whatever support we can give them through legislation, through ourselves, through our support is a way to go. But at the same time, I don't want to jeopardize any of these other ones to where we know we're probably not going to get full funding on all of these for sure. Maybe not even full funding on one of them. But
this
at
one, we
least
need
we
full
can-
funding.
yes.
Yeah, we do.
It's just, it's one of those things. Okay,
So I
which
guess-
bone do we want?
Right, that's the kind of the question here is, you know, what is the best way to go at this, that we're going to be able to get this fully funded and get enough here to get some of these done?
I think if we get the commission's approval, and we'll talk about the other projects, but on the Lake Maloya Dam project, I think it's just up to me and Dan to really, you know, communicate that
Figure out
all
the
around,
language.
that, you know, we need this project
Oh,
funded.
absolutely, yeah. I think we're all in agreement there.
And I think we go back to Chuck Thompson and we, you know, put this in front of him, but we, you know, we did put this in front of our senator last year, and we got kind of a unsatisfactory answer. But, yeah, but there was a different priority in that.
Really, I am paying attention to you.
Yeah.
With all said, I'll make a motion to approve 2019 legislative capital priorities.
And that would include everything that we've put in front of the commission.
Okay. We have a motion.
And I'd like to just state before we second, is that I think we do need to discuss the lobbyist option. I think that's going to be to our benefit this year, so.
If we were, right, if we were to do that, can then the lobbyist help us with the Dam Safety Bureau
I
issues?
think that would,
Or at least just pushing it with the legislators to be able to fund in that direction.
I think that would be wise. I think that, yeah, that would be probably very helpful.
Well, I don't think it has any bearing on what we're going to vote on now with this lobbyist at this time for the memorandum that we've done this room.
So we do have a motion to accept the priorities. We have a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the legislative capital outlay priorities as they have been presented tonight. Is there any further
Just for
discussion?
clarification, is that the memo plus Lake Malaya Dam? I want to make sure I word that correctly in the minutes.
I believe that is true.
Is that how you want it?
Yes.
Okay. Just for clarification, okay.
Is there any other discussion?
Just one thing that has been on the water board, the water department has been working diligently on this for all this time.
Absolutely.
And so we can be assured that we have the best foot forward on this. And it's so important to our community in this part of the state that we maintain the water the way we have it. It's critical. So, being said, I still want to vote on them.
It's just a big number there, Ron.
Yeah.
You know?
I think too, I mean, if worse comes to worse, I would love to have everything funded, but water is probably the most important necessity in our lives to
Sure.
keep our water supplied.
So we have a motion second. Any more discussion? Michael Ann, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Giacomo,
Yes.
Commissioner Chavez.
Yes?
Commissioner Chatterley,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schuster,
Yes.
Mayor Sagata.
Yes.
Thank you.
And we'll leave it up to you two to haggle out the details.
We will work on it, and, you know, in regard to the lobbyist, that's a new thing to me. We haven't done that in my time. I'll find some information for the commission and try to get it to you. Of course, we have, you know, one meeting before the session starts,
Right.
and we'll try to do a little coordination on that.
Okay. All right, moving on to item F, deliberate and act on introduction of an ordinance pursuant to NMSA 1978, Section 1-22-3.1, 2018, to opt into the election of the municipal officers of the city of Raton in the regular local election and determine option for adjustment of municipal officers' terms to correspond with new election date. Mr. Berry.
Mayor and Commission, is an item that we had talked about at the last meeting. We are talking about the introduction of an ordinance there. The direction, I think, that was given to myself and Michael Ann is that we would look at opting into the November election, and then that leaves us two options, as you have in front of you. And I give you the general terms, broad overview of this, and then Michael Ann gives you the good fine detail and the facts on this. So you have two versions of an ordinance in front of you, and I think that at this time we would look for the commission to probably discuss and develop a consensus about which direction you would like to go. You still have the option of remaining in the March election, municipal election. March 2020 would be that. That's not off the table, but the direction you gave us was to bring the opt-in November election ordinances to you for your consideration tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Berry? We did discuss this last meeting. I don't think there was a consensus that we would opt into this. Now it's, which direction do you want to go?
I have talked to a few people, and I don't think anybody that I've spoken with has been against lengthening, because that was my biggest concern, is how the public would feel. But we still have, something came up in our lives, we have the opportunity to resign, there's still recall, and people were really unhappy. So there are options of that, and it does save some money to the city. Because originally I thought shortened terms, and so after talking to some people, I would be able to support option 2.
And the discussions I've had, it's been the same, you know, that people seem to be pretty happy with the direction that the commission and the city government is going right now. You know, I've had positive input.
I've also had that experience. Most people have said, go to option 2 lengthened. Actually, I've had no one say shortened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it, well, it really affects us all, doesn't it? But, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely, it
that's
does, everybody, affects everybody.
Now, if I could, Mayor, I'm going to call on our city clerk to give you the details. There is a timing issue with this is a proposed ordinance, and we have a process on an ordinance, and we'll talk about the deadline that we're facing as well. Primary things.
Mayor and Commission, as we discussed at the last meeting with regards to the timing issue, tonight would be approval of an introduction of an ordinance, and of course, we're giving you a choice between option 1 and 2 to either shorten the terms by 3 months or lengthen the elected official terms by 21 months. In addition, based on the action taken this evening, I would then do a legal notice in the newspaper, and at our January 8th meeting, we would hold the public hearing and actually take action on that ordinance. So we are required to file the adopted ordinance with the Secretary of State no later than January 30th. So we're trying to meet that deadline. Other than that, we did talk about that there would be a cost savings with the option of moving our election from the normal March election to the November. We would pay about $1,250 a year, and it's an annual assessment that we would pay to the Secretary of State's office. And we've estimated that's probably a savings of about, close to $5,000 because our election costs do run a little over $7,000 every 2 years. And then in addition, we did talk a little bit about we do have a limited staff in our office that has to handle the elections and those functions over the course of about 4 months when we do conduct an election. So it does free up our staff to focus on, other duties and things that our office handles. So, is there anything else that you wanted me to cover?
We'll answer any questions that you might have.
I'll make a motion to introduce, how are we gonna, do I have to specifically state option 2?
Yes, if you could specify the option, then we'll know which version we're actually introducing.
I'll make a motion to introduce option 2 of the ordinance pursuant to MSA 1978, section 1-22-3.1, 2018, to opt into the election of the municipal officers of the city of Raton in the regular local election. And
I'll second.
A motion and a second to opt into option 2 that lengthens the term of the office and moves us all into the November election. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, vote by the sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item G, deliberate and act on resolution 2018-69, City of Raton budget adjustment number 6. Michael Ann, how about that?
Mayor and Commission, in your packet this evening is budget adjustment number 6. You will see that we're proposing several line item adjustments to several of our general fund department line items, and then also in our EMS fund, we have some additional revenues that we've collected this year for CPR classes, and the fire chief would like to allocate those funds to purchase some mannequins for the CPR training. Is there any questions?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2018-69, City of Raton budget adjustment number 6.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 2018-69, budget adjustment number 6 for fiscal year 19. Are there any further questions or discussion? Can we have a roll call vote? Michael Ann, please.
Commissioner Giacomo?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schuster?
Yes.
Commissioner Chatterley?
yes.
Commissioner Chavez? Mayor Sagata?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. Item H, City Manager's Report. Mr. Berry.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this afternoon, I attended a meeting along with the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem that included representatives from Amtrak that were in town today. It also included the Department of Transportation Rail Bureau, and then representatives of the offices of Senator Heinrich, Senator Udall, and Representative Ben Ray Lujan. And also in attendance were a number of the Southwest Chief communities. It sounds like this is going to be a regular communications group to try to maintain these communications between Amtrak and these Southwest Chief communities. That's necessary because we are going forward with the Tiger 9 grant, and the Tiger 9 grant was discussed. We will be working on that process. Colfax County is the lead agency on that, but all of the Southwest Chief communities have made a commitment to that, as the city of Raton has. So the initial step will be the environmental assessment. That will conform with the federal NEPA process, which can be a time-consuming and daunting process. So we're going forward with that. Mayor Pro Tem, I don't know if you have any additional comments on that process. I think it's okay, Mayor Pro Tem, if I talk about your role here at this point, and I would just report to the commission that Mayor Pro Tem Schuster has been included as the governor-elect's transition team, has attended a meeting, will attend a meeting tomorrow, and that is specifically on transportation issues going forward with the new administration. So I think it's a benefit to Raton to have a Raton person present in those transition meetings and have a seat at the table there. So definitely when we're talking about rail transportation and Southwest Chief in New Mexico, and we can communicate that with the new administration, that is important. And I don't know if you all have some comments on today's meeting.
Publicly, I'd like to thank Commissioner Bill Sobel for all the work he's done over the years. This was his last meeting, official meeting today, so I would just like to extend a hearty thank you to Bill for everything
He
he's
has
done.
worked hard
Absolutely.
and accomplished much.
We owe Commissioner Sobel a huge thanks for his hard work on Southwest Chief. We probably would not be where we're at now with 3 successful Tiger Grant applications, and the federal offices that stepped up this year to maintain that service. We would not have those things without Commissioner Sobel's efforts. I think that, part of this will be a discussion between Amtrak and the state of New Mexico, DOT, and the administration about ongoing maintenance of the section of line that is not public. It's owned by BNSF, but we do have a public use on that line. So there's a discussion coming up on that, and Amtrak had reported that they would be at the transition meeting for the Transportation Committee tomorrow, as well as Mayor Pro Tem, and that discussion will take place with the new administration. With the help of Michael Ann and the input of Molson Corbin, the City of Raton submitted our airport 5-year capital improvement plan today to Federal Aviation Administration. In that plan, we identified priorities consisting of apron reconstruction, a replacement of a precision approach, instrumentation and equipment with that precision approach, lighting replacement for our crosswind runway, and taxiway reconstruction of our crosswind taxiway. So those improvements add up to $4.1 million, and those would be things that we'll be talking about in future years as far as improvements to the airport. We had talked about the apron reconstruction with supplemental authorization. We had reported to you that we had an application in, and we're waiting to hear on that. And we're hoping to get funded on that because that is 100% funded with federal money, the supplemental authorization. There's no local money involved in that, so we're waiting to hear. Quickly report progress on our construction projects. I met with Dan Campbell earlier, and he reports that the Brilliant Heart Water Line project is in the final stages. The main line is completed. It's ready to go. The contractor's in the process of moving services from the old existing line to the new line. They only have a few of those left. I think they'll largely complete that this week, and we'll have substantial completion, and then there'll be some cleanup and some final things to do out there, but looks like we'll close that project out before Christmas. And then we have the First Street project, the Great Blocks project. We have good progress on that. I optimistically state to the commission that we'll have substantial completion on that project before Christmas also. We've got good cooperation with the weather so far, and we'll see how that goes in the next couple of weeks, but I think we will be looking at, and when I say substantial completion, what I mean is that there's still a couple of outstanding items that the contractor will come back in the warmer months and complete, but he'll wrap up everything that he can right now. So the placing of plant material and the energizing of the irrigation system, we'll wait till we get out of the winter time to do those things, but we'll be substantially complete. That's all I have, Mayor.
All righty, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Chatterley?
I'd like to publicly thank RPS just for the lights downtown. I know they purchased a lot of new ones, and it just looks fabulous. I was really excited, especially driving tonight. And then also, my fellow commissioners, we talked about the radio ad that we might do together with the new brand, and so I talked to Billy D, and he said he'd be willing, or Mario or whoever would come and be able to record us after the end of a commission meeting on January 8th. So I was going to talk to Billy and make sure that date's okay. If you all are still in, I have a rough script for us.
Oh boy.
It's very short, it's only 30 seconds, and we all take turns. So the only thing you would have to come up with is what Raton is your path to, so you could fill in your blank. So I'm not asking for approval or whatever, but if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. Just let me know so I can fix the wording so it'll be 30 seconds.
I really want to hear Commissioner Chavis's
Commissioner Giacomo, anything? None. Commissioner Chavez? Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, tomorrow in the middle of this meeting, if I get stuck for words, I may call any of you and you can give me some thoughts. But otherwise, thank you very much.
All right, I just want to touch real briefly on, we, as the municipal league, met with the New Mexico County Association a couple of weeks ago to get our legislative pact in order. A couple things about taxation bills that are coming forward that could affect us all. We'd like to see municipalities and counties involved in all levels of taxation, and specifically what they're talking about there is get a part of the income tax, because that is a little more stable. So they're looking for a couple of bills there to come forward. They would also, there's a bill already been put in the hopper to consolidate the 6 increments on the GRT side, which would give us more flexibility as to how we could use that money right now. You know, the increments can go to environment and stuff like that. This would allow us to have a little more flexibility. And then, of course, the local internet taxes. Right now, the state gets it all. They're estimating the state this year, after a year, will probably get between $30 and $40 million from interstate taxes, of which we see nothing right now. There is going to be, look for 2 or 3 or 4 bills to be introduced to get the tax to us. And that's about it. So, some talk about the gas tax. There's been no significant change in that in the Gas Act since 1988, so look for a couple bills there, especially one from John Arthur Smith. That's all I have. Anything else? This meeting's adjourned.